This is January the 6th, 2011. This is Connie Mason, and I'm interviewing Mr. Alton Ballance of Ocracoke, North Carolina. Alton, thank you so much for having me over here today.
Thank you for coming to visit, Connie.
Listen, first of all, a little background about yourself and your family. And you are a native Ocracoker, or Ococker as we call you.
Okay, yes, that's right. Grew up here. Mother and father both also from here. They were born and raised here.
And their names were?
Vera and Lawrence Ballance. And I still live in the same house that my mother was born and raised in. And she lived over 77 years here. And both of their sides of the family stretch back into this tangle of ancestors to the 1700s here, probably.
Right. And you have how many brothers and sisters?
One brother and one sister.
And their names are?
Kenny Mason and Kathy Hutcherson.
What's the order of?
Kenny, me, and Kathy.
Kathy, that's the oldest to youngest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you grew up on the island. One of the things I was interested in, well, let's finish your background first. You went to school here on Ocracoke.
I did.
And then you went off island to?
I did 2 years in UNC Asheville, and then finished up at Chapel Hill.
Mm-hmm. And your degree's in?
English and Education.
And right now you are?
Right now, I am a Center Fellow for the North Carolina Center for the Advancement of Teaching.
And that's in the old Coast Guard building here on Ocracoke.
That's right.
And I know they're lucky to have you. When you were growing up in Ocracoke, when was the first realization for you that the way you were growing up was probably not what everybody else was experiencing?
Well, getting to know the summer people, our ages, who came from places like New York City, and really all over the country, because even then we were getting thousands of people come through here. And the National Seashore was the reason for that. That opened up this country, to come through here, because we became part of the Seashore Highway. So we understood then that we were different, but they were different too. So it's all relative. And
what was the biggest thing that you noticed?
Well, the things that they may have had at their schools, their experiences, whether it was in sports, extracurricular activities, big city things, and cultural differences, maybe the way that they did things or how they reacted to our lifestyle, our culture.
Was there something in particular that they reacted to that you remember?
Well, that's a long time ago to think about those early years, but, whether it was our dialect, I think kids are kids as they are anywhere, but it's probably the main thing, whether it's dialect or awareness of the world, the greater world around us. We had knowledge and experience and understanding in a different way, in terms of our island knowledge and understanding things like weather and being creative and versatile and interdependent and dependent and resourceful.
What about Portsmouth? When you were growing up, how did you think about Portsmouth? What was your perception of Portsmouth?
Portsmouth was always a fascinating place, because I remember barely, as a child when people still lived there, always had heard about this man named Henry Piggott, always wanted to go over there, and came close by there a number of times fishing, and you'd always look ashore and wonder about that place. It was mysterious. You wondered why it was in decline. How could 3 people live there? How could that work? And who were they? But it was almost ghost-like. It was like, in some ways, the thought of passing by a cemetery. It was just dying, and it was a place of old houses and an old life-saving station, an old church, and so it had that sort of spooky appeal, like any old abandoned house that a child would go by. But I loved going over there as a teenager after the people had gone, and the houses were abandoned. You could go in them, and it was always just a great trip to take people over and show them, walk around. There was nothing organized about it like there is today. It was truly like an abandoned place. But that's fascinating to young people, and so that was, the early years and that kind of impression on the place.
So when you were young, now may I ask how old you are now?
54.
So you were born in
56.
In 56. So we're talking about the first experiences going over there were probably when you were
early 1970s.
In the 70s.
Late 60s. So it was just right about when the time when
the park was getting established.
they were right.
So that really was a time of really nobody being in the village except for maybe some hunters and some folks that were living over, caretakers and that kind of population. Did you ever think in later years of comparisons between Ocracoke and Portsmouth? And did you ever think why Portsmouth was declining and why Ocracoke was?
Yeah,
did you feel a kinship, I guess?
Yeah, and the more you learn and the more you read and study and think about the history of the Outer Banks, you understand why things happened the way they did. We got roads and ferries. We had a natural harbor, and that it was a little more distant over at Portsmouth. So I understand how those people moved off. It was sort of like, it naturally happened. And there are places all across the country where, the towns that were once booming, for whatever reasons, economics, social reasons, migration, people moved and they died. The places died. So, I often thought about that and think about that. And, it's, I probably could say that I prefer it like it is, rather than to think that it could have been another Bald Head Island or something.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really surprised to hear that there wasn't as much communication or travel back and forth to Portsmouth.
Well, in my memory, in my lifetime, there's just nobody there really had any connection there. Yeah.
Were there some people who moved from Portsmouth and came over here to live?
Maybe temporarily. Nobody comes to mind right now. You probably would find that out better from, Rudy or somebody like that.
Right. So, did you have any? Did you hear any stories about Portsmouth when you were growing up? That kind of made you, when you did go by Portsmouth, that it kind of made those voices of those folks come alive to you?
Nothing really comes to mind now. Because probably Fred Cannon when he drowned. Remember that, and that was just like anybody drowning. You wonder about what happened, and you were thinking about a body, lost out there and being eaten by crabs and all kinds of, gory things that kids think about.
And Fred was a caretaker for Armistice, was it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But he was a fisherman, and I remember Fowler O'Neill talking about Tom Bragg when he died, and he would always preface it by saying, when I was working on something, he'd say, I found Tom Bragg froze to death with an oar still in his hand over at Portsmouth, and I know he didn't get caught up on his work, and you'll never get caught up on yours. Fowler said that to me many times.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's a good story. How is Zoe doing since Fowler?
Zoe's doing fine. I mean, they've done a lot of work on her house. Son Bobby has, so yeah, she's doing all right.
Good. So Fowler and some of the older folks, they had ties to Portsmouth. They had people they knew, like Miss Gaskins that would come over, Francis Eubank's mother, but I guess the real tie in later years, kind of the milestone was Henry Piggott coming to live with Jean's, and he was kind of like the signpost to all of us that things were ending.
Right.
Did you ever meet Henry? Or
I think so. I think, yeah. I mean, but I just don't have any kind of there's nothing that goes with that other than an image of he was standing there or something with somebody. So I did not have that opportunity.
Are there anything else about Portsmouth that's outstanding to you from your perspective of growing up here on Ocracoke?
No, just that vision of a place that was, I always loved when we went mullet fishing in that direction, because 95% of the time we'd go north, Howard's Reef, and those places. And when Uriah and Sullivan always decided to go over in that direction, it was exciting as a kid, because we were going in such a different place, and getting up next to Portsmouth sometime. So that was always interesting.
One of the things that you're doing over here at the North Carolina Center for the Advancement of Teaching is you're taking teachers, depending on the seminar they choose, taking them over to Portsmouth. And I was really wanting to know the general overall opinions of the teachers. I know that now next week we're going to go out and actually talk and hear some of those personal experiences. But from you as being the leader of these seminars, what's the overall impression that the teachers get from seeing Portsmouth Island?
Well, they're fascinated, first of all, to be at Ocracoke, because we pull teachers from across the state, and many of them have never been to Ocracoke, some not even to the Outer Banks. So to go to a place like that is quite an experience for them, especially in the wintertime. And we do a lot of experiential outings like that complement the subject, whatever we're doing. And I try to fit a Portsmouth experience into as many of my seminars as I can. Whether it's about writing, there's a mystery and there's an inspiration being in a village like Portsmouth, or sea level rise. You're looking at life at sea level there. Or the Coast Guard. I do a seminar on the Coast Guard. There's an old life-saving station. So anything can work, but it's the process of getting them in boats, which many don't have that experience, and taking that 5 or 6 mile trip through those open waters is just so invigorating and intriguing to the teachers. So it's the journey, that's a part of it, but then to get there, and even sometimes in the summer when it's really challenging with mosquitoes, we still do it. And they love it because they love the sense of going to an out-of-the-way place, and that it took some effort to get there. And often I will, always I try to end the visit over there with gathering in the church and saying words and asking for questions and taking feedback from the teachers about what all this means. What could a life over here, what was it like? And challenge them to think about the priorities in life. When you are really living so sparsely. How much do you really need in this world? And what have we come, how far have we come, and how much we take for granted from a life that's represented over there in those buildings, and through that landscape, and thinking about getting up and trying to make it work every day in with those kind of challenges. So I think they come to appreciate whatever the subject is we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It can, go through that Portsmouth filter very interestingly.
I guess a lot of them did not know Portsmouth was even there.
No.
And to come to Ocracoke and experience this, I mean, this is a totally different experience for most people.
It is.
And then coming in the summer is a world different
mm-hmm.
than coming in the winter.
That's right.
And do any of your folks who come in the winter come back in the summer and see you and say,
they do.
Cannot believe the
mm-hmm.
difference in the
right, and they they come to love the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had some wonderful young people stay at Cruise Inn, college students, and you think, okay, they're folks that want to be on a warm beach or something, but these kids rambled out here and they just loved that experience. And it's a different look, much more the soul of the Outer Banks and Ocracoke and Portsmouth can be gleaned in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's marvelous to come over here now, and except for things being closed, which I understand, people
mm-hmm.
need a rest, the restaurants and things, they need a break
mm-hmm.
after putting in so much time and being such a hectic time as the summer. But other than that, it's great. It's great.
Mm.
Well, as far as Portsmouth goes, if you could have a vision for the future for Portsmouth, what would you see? Is there anything differently that you would do, as far as preservation?
Well, I think they've done an excellent job over there, and I can see, the ongoing challenges of maintaining the buildings, and I hope they are able to secure enough funding to do that. These are historic structures, and like all historic structures in national parks, they need to be maintained. I think the Park Service also needs to plan for more visitors. It's just the way, we get more people at Ocracoke, Portsmouth is going to get more people, and they seem to be doing that. Their exhibits and signage, great additions. And they're going to have to step up their presence. They're going to probably have to have more rangers over there or an interpreter. Just relying on volunteers may not cut it in the near future, I believe. And it would be true of any park that they have.
They're working on a audio tour. I don't
mm-hmm.
know how that all is going to work, but that might be.
There are people that love those kind of things, and but I hope they don't change a lot. They don't need a fancy visitor center over there. What they've got's fine. They don't need to make it too convenient. They don't need to spray for mosquitoes. They wouldn't do that anyway. But it's just that's
part of the experience.
That's part of the experience, and that's one of the gateways. You gotta be able to experience that or live with that, because that's kind of what the people did. And I could see them putting a little more attention in the station and possibly even making that a functional place that serious students of Portsmouth could go and really, spend time exploring what that island life means. Bob Vogel and I had talked about that briefly. So that could happen. I mean, it would have to be on a small scale, and when I say serious students, it's not just like people on recreation, but just people who would really be interested in the the academic side of things, the study side of things, science, culture, history,
I think they talked about doing, and this might be something that NCCAT could do in conjunction with the park over there, is doing creative writing classes.
Sure.
Photography classes, art classes.
Exactly. And we love getting the teachers in the school, and just having a little session there. So I think there are great opportunities there. We're a natural to work with those things. So it's why I try to incorporate Portsmouth in most of my seminars. I think the potential is there, but there's a basic level of service, and all the legalities involved in accepting people under one's roof, they have to be considered.
Absolutely.
So there's great potential there. At the beach is absolutely, wonderful place. I'm, always amazed flying over Portsmouth and Core Banks. It's just absolutely one of the best of flights of anywhere I've ever been. There's such an interesting story about the early commerce of our country that's told there. So there's a delicate balance to be maintained between exposing it too much, because if you invite people, they will come. I don't know that it doesn't really need to be marketed. It just needs to be one of those places that has, can receive people. I feel the same way about Little Cataloochee up in the Smoky Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Portsmouth Island of the Smoky Mountains. I'd hate to see that, exploded and, 1,000 people going over there every day. It's out of sync with experience. It would be out of sync with the character and the experience. So,
well, when we have homecoming at Portsmouth, there's almost 400 people that come, and even with 400 people, when they all spread out, and you really get more of a feeling of a working village, because you're running into people and you greet people, and they're in different buildings, and so it probably could hold a lot of visitors and not impact too much the with those 400 people there, because it's so dispersed out. But I doubt that any time other than homecoming we would have 400 people on the island. So.
Right.
Because it would be precluded by the ferry service and that type of thing. But I don't think we're in any danger of topping out.
It just depends on the demand. Need sort of, people find a way to capitalize on that.
Right.
So.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to say about?
I think that's about it. I think it's, it is one of my favorite places at all times of the year, but especially the wintertime. Yeah. It's just nothing like rambling around over there and not having to take the extra effort and mess with mosquitoes, but just to be able to poke around and look. And, one of the last things I'll say about it is one of my favorite trips over there. And favorite stories was going with Maddie. And Maddie's 10 years old now, but 2 years ago, we were over there at Thanksgiving with Rudy. And she was 8, and, it's the first time that she'd really come to understand this place. She'd been over there once before, I think. And so we were walking around, and no bugs or anything. And we were walking in one of the cemeteries, and she was just trying to understand what it was like, why these children died, and her age. She's looking at a little tombstone, somebody 8 years old, and she was I could see her little mind just sort of really trying to, why did these children die? And then we walked on the edge of the cemetery. We're walking back, and she paused, and she looked back, and she said, "Daddy, Santa Claus ever come to a place like this?" So I'll close with that.
Okay. That's a great story, Alton. Well, thank you so much for your time today.